I picked up it, paperback, beat up paperback from the library when I was in 5th grade. I was way too young to read it, I think, but boy did I read it, and it completely changed the way I looked at the world. It terrified me in a way that I, in 5th grade, had never been scared, but also made me feel empowered. And it started this experience that I've had with so much of your work, where getting through the anxiety of being afraid while reading a story taught me, who was a very scared kid, how to be brave in short bursts, in short increments, and it became exercise of character for me to get through the books, and so I became a constant reader, and then struggled my way into somehow a career where people would pay for me to make movies, which is still crazy to me, and now I'm sitting here next to you, which is also completely surreal.
By taking Dan Torrance's story as a grown-up and filtering it through his own apparently large heart, Mike has been able to take the Kubrick movie, I think, a step further so that it warms things up. People are going to compare this to The Shining, and they're going to say, this is, going back and trying to reheat leftovers and all the rest of it, and that the sequel is just a blatant opportunity to try and ride on the coattails of a book that was a big success and blah, 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 and all the rest of it. So you have to cope with all that stuff and kind of put it out of your mind and say, this is what I'm doing. The story should stand on its own, as its own thing. And Mike's movie stands on its own, as its own thing. And it has its own excitement and its own rewards apart from all the stuff that it brings with it. But again, I think the stuff that it brings with it, it could have been baggage if somebody had done it that it wasn't good, but instead it's a dividend. It enriches. And I don't know about anybody else, how anybody's going to feel about it. But for me, it was great to go back to the Overlook. I would say that Rebecca, as Rose the Hat, is just an amazing, she's so beautiful and so evil, and she doesn't underplay, she doesn't overplay. It's like, hi there, she's great. How are you, handsome? She's wonderful, and it's a victory, too, for Mike's eye and the costume designer's eye that the hat is perfect. I had visualized a much higher hat, but what she wears is perfect. She is Rose the Hat.
One of the things that I believe very much about horror cinema in general is that your genre elements are only as strong as your characters. And that's something that I learned reading Stephen King for a lifetime. And one of the most rewarding aspects of kind of any movie is watching a character come to life. For something like this, these were characters that appeared in a certain way in your head when you worked on the novel. And you communicate them so beautifully on the page that I feel like they were very similarly represented in my imagination reading the novel. Rose the Hat, when I put the novel down, and I read it the weekend that it was released, I thought she was one of the most exciting and charismatic and fascinating antagonists that I'd read in a very long time. And I was so excited to see Rebecca bring that to life.
One of the things that works in this movie is that we see people that we can relate to as human beings, people who are friends, people who are caregivers, people who are protectors. And that's to a large extent what makes the scary parts scary.
When you use the words just horror, I always kick at that a little bit, because I think horror in general is, I love what you said about it being just one string on the guitar. It's what makes it cathartic, I think, is that it's a reflection, it's a reflective surface into which we can kind of safely examine the darker sides of the human experience. And you never would recognize darkness without light, for something to just be horror. I don't really understand. And one of the things I think that defines a Stephen King novel, and I hope defines the kind of movies that I'm interested in making, is that they're movies about being a human being, and they're movies about love and friendship and loss and some of the deepest fears that we have as, humans on this giant rock floating in space, but that they're ultimately meant to show us in equal measure the darkest it can be out there and kind of the apex of our positive potential as well. And I think that's why people gravitate so strongly to works like The Stand that are so clearly about human beings and how we fall into either of those categories often at the same time.
The Dr. Sleep novel and our script seems to be very much about, recovery, the child having gone through this terrible experience. How does he carry on, and how does he deal with his shine? How does he deal with the fact that he's different, and he deals with it by drinking like his father did, to the point where he can't do that anymore, and he's as his father did. His father got sober, I believe, 5-6 months before he took the job at the Overlook Hotel. But our Dan gets sober, and then is led back to the Overlook Hotel eventually. He's working in an old folks in a hospice, in fact, an old folks hospice, and he finds, although he's done this before in our story, we discover that he's rather helpful to people as they pass away, and so he sits with the people who are dying and helps them cross over, if you like, because that's where he talks to them about it being like falling asleep, and it's like a wonderful sleep, and so he gets the nickname Dr. Sleep. She reaches out to Dan. She doesn't know him, and he doesn't know her, but she also has the shine. She also has the psychic ability, and she projects into his world. She's looking for help. He hears her. Because he hears her, she when she really needs his help, she finds him and comes to him. At first he turns her away, and because his whole philosophy early on in the story is not to use the shine, he's drunk to sort of suppress it all these years, to suppress the horrible visitations that he gets in his mind and the hallucinations he gets with people visiting him from the Overlook Hotel, ghosts and spirits that are trapped there. And he's developed a way through the help of Dick Halloran of trapping them and keeping them locked away inside him. And so he's all about not using the shine, not using his abilities, trying to keep it all just on the down low. And so when Abra comes to him, he suggests that she just, go home and leave things alone. Don't pry into things that that aren't your business, and don't shine. And it's really through his relationship with her that she opens that up in him, and he realizes that's an important part of who he is. It's the worst place in the world for people who have the shine, and he knows that he has the shine, and he knows that Abra has it more than him, and he knows that Rose the Hat has it more than both of them. So if she is the most powerful person or thing with the shine, then this is the best place to take her to try and kill her, because it will be deadly for her to be in that space. We're doing an adaptation of Stephen King's novel Dr. Sleep, and that's as good an idea as any. It's an original story that he's written, and it's therefore an original movie. Of course, there's a lot of thought and attention being paid to pleasing people that love that movie and people that love that book. I really like working with her. She's lovely. She's so bubbly and full of beans and the joys. And then when Mike says, stand by, she just like snaps into Abra, and you just watch her change.
Abra is one of the leads in our film. She is Dan's niece. She possesses the Shining, and she's the one who helps Dan take down the True Knot. The Shining is a supernatural ability. It's like telekinesis, it's being psychic. You see like visions, and you can move things with your mind. You can read people's thoughts, and you can send your thoughts to another person. Dr. Sleep clears up a lot of questions and gaps in The Shining. When we follow Dan and Abra, it really answers what happened to Danny and what happened to his family and everything. And the connection with Abra and Dan really compel you to see the movie, I think. Mike works amazing with child actors. To help me prepare He called me and Ewan in for a director's meeting, and he told us about his vision for Abra, Dan, and initially Dr. Sleep. Ewan is awesome to work with. He's super nice, he's really sweet, he's fun-loving, but he's also super professional. Before we start filming, he'll help me run my lines. And my job is to be there for Ewan, and his is to be there for me. And we're a good team, I think. Rebecca's amazingly funny, but also right when we get to the scene, she's extremely focused. She helps me focus, definitely, when I'm going all crazy. And she's perfect at being evil. I think it's a real coming of age for Abra. She's a bit more naive and vulnerable at the beginning, and then towards the end, she really understands what can happen in the world and reality and things like that. I love horror. I am a total horror fan. I don't think it's really about being scared. I think it's really just, I don't know, just the dark aspect. Since I'm so used to my childlike life, I like being in dark reality.